safety kit for your Wolf Warrior King GT Pro. For the first step, we are going to use a 3mm Allen key to remove the 4 bolts holding on the controller box cover. Once we have the 4 bolts removed, you will then place the cover off to the side, being mindful that there is a rubber seal that can fall out, so just keep track of that. We are going to start by using a pair of snips to cut the zip tie holding on the rear motor phase wires. We'll then separate out our battery connection. And here you can see the 2 positive cables we will be working with. Go ahead and remove the fiberglass tape that is around the connections. It can be a little tricky to find the beginning, but once you do, it should come off very easy. We now have our connectors exposed. We're going to use some electrical tape to isolate the battery lead, just in case anything were to make contact with it. Note the extra piece of tape off to the side is not going to be used, but is just in case a piece becomes unusable, or if we need some more, if we need to walk away to protect it from touching anything delicate where it might arc. And you can see here how I wrap the leads coming from the battery, just to avoid any potential short circuits by touching any of the other electronics. This is the fuse we'll be using today. And before we proceed with any connections, we'll want to use the heat shrink. As you see, I slip over here, and then you can go ahead and make your connection. I'm starting with the controller side. And then we go ahead and we slip the heat shrink over the joint in preparation for later when we shrink it. We'll go ahead and unwrap our battery lead. Slip our heat shrink over and make the connection. I'll now proceed to do this for the other fuse as well. Once we have our connections made, we will move on to shrinking the heat shrink. Our preferred method is to use a heat gun, which is demonstrated here. This is the most effective and the most common method to shrink the heat shrink. An alternative to this would be a hairdryer, although it takes significantly longer and can sometimes not adequately shrink the wrap. A third option, and the one that we suggest you use the most caution with, is a lighter. Notice how I rapidly move the lighter around the shrink to not expose any one part of it to the flame for too long. Okay, so now we'll begin the process of putting the connections away. The most critical thing I wanted to highlight here was the fuse on the left set of battery leads. Seems to fit as well as possible when stuffed in the lower slot underneath the controllers. With that space freed up with the fuse put away, you can now see the multitude of slight adjustments and zip tie placements that I performed to get the cables to rest nicely within the controller bay. You will have to play around with it as cable configurations do vary, but this will give you a strong idea of what's involved with placing the cables and how to do so. There will be a still image after this clip to show you what I ultimately ended up with and what worked best for me. And you can see, after revising my wiring one last time, when we go to install the cover, it'll fit nice and flush. And here is that still image of the wiring that I ended up with. Go ahead and reinstall the cover. Power the scooter on to make sure we still have full functionality. And have a great day.